We have a major brainwashing against Russia for the Ukrainian war in the mainstream media without understanding how we arrived at this stage where we are speaking of a nuclear war like it was a joke. We need to understand the historical facts and strategies played by a few players that brought us to this conflict, which is no longer a local war, but becoming a global nuclear catastrophe where the human race could vanish from this planet. We will need to analyze from Zbigniew Brzezinski, Henry Kissinger to Victoria Nuland about policies and strategies for Russia regarding NATO's expansion and Ukraine. George Bush initially understood the red line about NATO's expansion of Ukraine for Russia. The U.S. lied and did not keep its promises about NATO's expansion to Russia. Why are we surprised about the Russian attack on Ukraine? They knew very well that Putin would give a very strong response. The ongoing war in Ukraine has become a major focal point in global politics, drawing intense scrutiny and leading to alarming discussions about the potential for nuclear conflict. A significant aspect of this discourse is the pervasive portrayal of Russia in mainstream media, which often simplifies the situation into a narrative of unprovoked aggression by Russia without delving into the historical context and strategic moves that have contributed to the current crisis. To understand the full scope of this conflict and the dangerous rhetoric surrounding it, it is essential to examine the historical facts and the key players whose policies have shaped the path to this precarious juncture. Historical context and key players. Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Grand Chessboard. Zbigniew Brzezinski, a prominent geopolitical strategist and former national security advisor, played a significant role in shaping U.S. foreign policy during the Cold War and beyond. His seminal work, The Grand Chessboard, outlines a strategy for maintaining U.S. dominance in Eurasia, emphasizing the importance of Ukraine as a critical geopolitical pivot. Brzezinski argued that without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be a Eurasian empire. His views influenced U.S. policy to ensure that Ukraine remained out of Russia's sphere of influence, setting the stage for future conflicts. Henry Kissinger and Realpolitik. Henry Kissinger, another towering figure in U.S. foreign policy, advocated for a pragmatic approach to international relations. While Kissinger's strategy focused on balancing power among nations to maintain stability, his insights on Russia and Eastern Europe also recognized the importance of Ukraine. Kissinger believed that pushing Ukraine into NATO would be a grave mistake, warning that it would trigger a strong response from Russia. His stance highlights the delicate balance required in dealing with Russia's strategic interests. Victoria Nuland and recent policies. Victoria Nuland, the U.S. Under-Secretary of State for Political Affairs, has been a vocal proponent of supporting Ukraine in its aspirations to align more closely with Western institutions like NATO and the European Union. Her involvement in Ukraine, particularly during the 2014 Maidan Revolution, has been controversial. Nuland's support for Ukraine's Western integration and her critical stance on Russia have contributed to heightened tensions, with Russia perceiving these moves as direct threats to its security. NATO's expansion and broken promises. The expansion of NATO has been a contentious issue between the West and Russia. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, there were assurances given to Russia that NATO would not expand eastward. Former U.S. officials and documents reveal that during negotiations on German reunification, Western leaders assured Soviet leaders that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward. Despite these assurances, NATO has steadily expanded to include several Eastern European countries, directly contradicting the promises made to Russia. George H.W. Bush, the U.S. president at the time of the Soviet Union's collapse, was aware of the delicate nature of NATO's expansion. He recognized that pushing NATO's boundaries too close to Russia could provoke a severe reaction. This understanding was seemingly disregarded in subsequent administrations, which pursued an aggressive enlargement policy, culminating in discussions about Ukraine potentially joining NATO, a red line for Russia. The current crisis and media narrative. The mainstream media's portrayal of the Ukraine conflict often lacks this nuanced historical perspective. The narrative frequently depicts Russia's actions as unprovoked and solely driven by expansionist ambitions, ignoring the complex interplay of strategic moves and broken promises that have led to this point. This oversimplification not only misleads the public, but also exacerbates the conflict by failing to acknowledge the legitimate security concerns of all parties involved. The risk of nuclear catastrophe. The rhetoric surrounding the Ukraine war has escalated to dangerous levels, with discussions of nuclear conflict becoming alarmingly casual. The failure to appreciate the historical context and the strategic considerations of key players like Brzezinski, Kissinger, and Nuland contributes to a lack of understanding about the gravity of the situation. The potential for a nuclear catastrophe is not a trivial matter. It is a stark reminder of the need for careful diplomacy and a thorough understanding of the historical and strategic factors at play. Conclusion. To navigate the path towards peace and avoid a global catastrophe, it is imperative to move beyond the simplistic narratives propagated by mainstream media. A comprehensive understanding of the historical context, the strategic decisions of key players, and the legitimate security concerns of all parties involved is crucial. Recognizing the broken promises and the impact of NATO's expansion on Russia's sense of security is essential in addressing the root causes of the conflict. Only through informed and balanced discourse can we hope to de-escalate the situation and avoid the unthinkable consequences of a nuclear war.